All right, buckle up, because today we're plunging into a theory so audacious, so utterly unsettling, it might just redefine everything you thought you knew about where we come from. Forget the neat, tidy narratives of your high school textbooks, the polished documentaries that wrap evolution up with a bow. What if the most celebrated milestones of human development, our intelligence, our upright walk, even our very language, were actually symptoms of a profound, ancient catastrophe?
Indeed. Today, we're taking a deep dive into an extraordinary, almost forbidden text. Oscar Kiss Maerth's The Beginning Was the End, a really, really hard-to-find book nowadays, showing that we still have taboo subjects, despite our general conception of living in an advanced civilization.
That's right. This book was better known back in the 70s and 80s. In fact, the new wave band Devo based their name and some covers on Oscar Kiss Maerth's whole theory.
This isn't just a book published in 1967. It's a renegade challenge to our core identity, penned in the unexpected tranquility of a Buddhist monastery in the mountains of China. Our mission, as always, is to unpack Maerth's astonishing claims about human origin, evolution, and our current predicament.
And importantly, we're here for pure, unadulterated exploration of the ideas he put forth, right? Without judgment, just seeking to understand what he was trying to say.
Exactly. Pure exploration.
And trust us, you are absolutely going to want to stay with us for every single mind-bending revelation. Because by the end of this deep dive, you'll hear how a seemingly innocuous dietary shift might have set off a chain reaction that made us intelligent, yes, but also, well, profoundly unwell. We'll explore everything from Maerth's wild explanation for why you wear clothes to his unsettling take on why massive crowds can fall into collective hysteria. And just wait until we unravel what Maerth truly believes is the real meaning behind the Garden of Eden story.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It's a reinterpretation that will challenge everything you think you know about humanity's fall. This is truly a journey into the unexpected.
It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths, or at least a dramatically different version of them.
Ready to have your perceptions challenged? Then do us a huge favor right now. Hit that like button. Seriously, it's how we know you're enjoying these wild journeys with us. Subscribe to The Deep Dive for more explorations into the unexpected. Trust me, we've got an entire library of paradigm-shifting stories waiting. And hey, if you want to support us in bringing you these truly radical explorations, consider joining our memberships. You'll get access to, well, let's just say, a whole lot more of us and the incredible stories we uncover. It's like getting a VIP pass to the most exclusive intellectual party on the internet.
And you definitely want to be on that guest list.
You absolutely do. Now let's unpack this fascinating, often bizarre narrative. Our journey begins, as so many do, with the author himself, Oscar Kiss Maerth. Born in Central Europe in 1914, his life reads like an epic adventure across continents, South America, Australia, Asia. He was a vegetarian, practiced yoga for over 2 decades, and in 1967, he retreated to the serene Buddhist monastery of Sinsan in China.
Yeah, that setting is quite striking, isn't it?
It really is. This is where he chose to pen this revolutionary book. It paints quite a picture, doesn't it? A man of such diverse experience with a deep personal spiritual practice, choosing a Buddhist sanctuary to write something so utterly disruptive to Western thought.
It truly does. And his core message, laid out right in the very first chapter of his book, is profoundly direct, almost an accusation. Maerth claims that humanity, despite its countless discoveries and technological leaps, has shockingly failed to understand the most basic thing itself.
Ourselves. Wow.
Yes. He asserts that the name we proudly bear, Homo sapiens, the wise man, is a self-appointed title, completely unvalidated by any objective truth. His urgent plea to us, the readers, is to recognize who we truly are, to grasp the truth of our origins, and to fundamentally reevaluate our goals before it's too late.
Before it's too late.
And he even frames this message within an extraordinary sense of cosmic time, dating his writing not just to 1967, but by referencing thousands of years after major philosophical and religious figures like Moses, Lao Tzu, Buddha, Jesus Christ, and Muhammad.
So he's putting himself in that lineage almost.
It feels like it. It's a powerful, almost prophetic framing for such a controversial work, suggesting a universal, timeless truth he believes he's tapping into.
So he's essentially saying we're suffering from a profound identity crisis, a self-delusion at our very core. That's quite the opening argument.
That's exactly it. Maerth then introduces this intriguing concept. He posits that humans are newcomers to Earth, having no true memory of their birth or origins.
Amnesiacs on planet Earth.
Kind of, yeah. Instead, he says we've invented all sorts of flattering myths about ourselves, like being divinely placed at the center of creation by a benevolent God who, Maerth suggests rather cheekily, was just seeking praise and company. This deep amnesia, Maerth argues, is precisely why humanity constantly grapples with these anguishing fundamental questions. Where do we come from? Who are we? Why are we? Where are we going?
These we literally don't remember.
Precisely. And in Maerth's view, the only true witnesses to our genesis, the animals and plants, are mute. They cannot provide answers. So humanity, being inherently curious and deeply troubled by this lack of memory, was left to forge its own explanations. Often, he says, self-serving ones, disconnected from reality.
Which explains all the different creation myths, maybe.
That's his claim. He says this is why early European explorers, encountering distant peoples and civilizations centuries ago, heard such a wide variety of origin myths. This diversity, according to Maerth, sparked a collective doubt and initiated the modern scientific search for tangible evidence of our past, leading to the discovery of ancestral bones.
Okay, so far so. Somewhat standard, maybe, but then it takes a turn.
A sharp turn. Because the older the bones found, the less they resembled our modern form. For Maerth, this isn't a simple linear evolutionary ladder pointing upwards.
And this is where he really goes for the jugular of conventional evolutionary science.
Yeah.
Maerth directly challenges the widely accepted idea that humans naturally evolved from apes, or what he calls simian creatures.
Right.
What's the core puzzle he sees with how we understand ape and human coexistence, especially around brain size and tool making?
Well, he finds a fundamental contradiction, Maerth asks. If human evolution were a purely natural process, why did tool-making, human-like apes, those with similar brain volumes to other apes, roughly 400 to 500 cubic centimeters, live in the same places at the same time as non-tool-making apes who didn't develop these capabilities?
Good question. Why did that happen?
And more to the point, he asks, why did those non-tool-making ones just vanish without a trace? He argues that if it was a natural process, all members of a race in the same geographic area should have undergone a similar development.
Like everyone gets the upgrade together.
Sort of, yeah. The fact that only one group suddenly took this leap while others remained unchanged or disappeared is, in his view, profoundly unnatural.
That's a compelling point, actually. It does challenge a cornerstone of what many of us learned. And he also highlights something truly unique about human brain growth, describing it as unnatural. Could you elaborate on that?
He points to the truly unique and, in his view, unnatural phenomenon of a vertical ascent in the brain size of just one particular ape race. We're talking about a brain volume swelling to roughly 3 or 4 times its original size, from approximately 400 cubic centimeters to 1,400 cubic centimeters.
Wow, that's huge.
In what, geologically speaking, is an incredibly short span, just 1 million years. Furthermore, their intelligence and memory supposedly multiplied by 100 or even 1,000 during this period.
1,000 times smarter in a million years. That does sound fast for evolution.
Maerth insists that this rapid, disproportionate growth is utterly unparalleled in the entire history of biology. He argues that attempts by scientists and theologians to frame this as natural evolution or a divine will are driven by unconscious pressure and inherited guilt, rather than unbiased thought.
Inherited guilt. We'll probably come back to that. Okay, and as a perfect example of how Maerth believes conventional science has it all backward, he makes a rather witty yet pointed dig at the idea of bipedalism as an evolutionary advantage.
Oh yeah, the walking upright thing.
We're often told walking upright helped us see over tall grass, spot enemies, or hunt more efficiently. All the usual stuff. But Maerth says, what if it was a loss? What if it was actually a disadvantage that we were forced into?
Right. He sort of laughs at the idea.
He even makes fun of the idea that an animal would choose to walk upright to escape a wild boar or a lion, saying it would give a lot to climb a tree faster. Which, fair point.
He definitely has a way with words.
And just to give you a little hint for what's coming up, he'll later reveal a surprising reason he claims we started walking on 2 legs. It's definitely not what you expect, and it involves something very anatomical.
It's a completely different lens through which to view one of the defining characteristics of humanity, and this leads us directly to the most controversial, unsettling, and groundbreaking claim within Maerth's entire hypothesis, the true spark of human evolution.
This is where Maerth really lays down his gauntlet. He claims human evolution is not natural. It wasn't some slow, gradual process of adaptation. Instead, it was initiated by a conscious, manipulative act. Tell us more about this deeply provocative revelation.
Brace yourselves, because this is where it gets truly radical. Maerth's core revelation is that humanity's transformation began when an ape discovered that consuming the fresh brains of its conspecifics, that is, other apes of its own kind, actually increased its sexual drives.
Wait. Eating brains increased sex drive. Not intelligence initially.
Not initially, according to him. That came later. He posits that this initial sexual appetite for brains rapidly led to an addiction.
An addiction to brains. Sheesh. It was only later, after this practice had become widespread and habitual, that it was discovered that brain consumption also significantly increased intellectual faculties.
So the intelligence boost was a side effect of the sex drive addiction, he claims. And Maerth doesn't shy away from the profound implications. He states unequivocally that all early humans across all continents were headhunters and cannibals. This practice, he argues, continued for over 1 million years, only ceasing or at least dramatically decreasing around 50,000 years ago.
1 million years of this. Wow.
The shocking conclusion for Maerth is that the first man was literally the ape who first ate a conspecific's brain. This, he argues, is the very definition of hominization. The brain, not some literal fruit, was, in his view, the true forbidden fruit-making man. Intelligent, yes, but also fundamentally unwell.
So our intelligence, our very humanity, sprang from an act of cannibalism fueled by sex drive. That is an extraordinary claim. But Maerth says he has uncomfortable evidence from the earth itself. What does he point to in the archaeological record?
He points to archaeological findings that he believes support his theory. Thousands upon thousands of skulls, especially those older than 50,000 years, found without corresponding skeletons or often separated from them.
Just piles of skulls.
Pretty much. What's more, almost all these skulls were opened, often at the nose, with clear internal scraping marks. For the most ancient proto-humans, the skulls weren't even carefully opened. They were shattered like nuts, which in his view indicates a desire for the contents, the brain, not just for some ritualistic use of the skull itself.
Shattered like nuts. Okay, that's graphic. And this next detail is crucial, separating his theory from mere opportunistic scavenging, right?
You're spot on. A crucial detail that Maerth emphasizes is that the bodies themselves were rarely consumed. It was almost exclusively the brains.
Just the brains, not the rest of the body.
Right. He points to the remains of ancient human ancestors, like the Sinanthropus, or Peking man, found in China, whose family members, even those who died naturally, were subjected to this practice. The excavations, according to Maerth, show that this form of cannibalism began simultaneously with the process of hominization. No earlier, no later.
So it wasn't something that came later. It was there from the start of us.
From the very start, he argues. And it was universal. All human races and their ape ancestors across all inhabited regions were cannibals, with this widespread practice dramatically decreasing around 40,000 to 50,000 years ago.
And this is where he debunks what he calls scientific cover-ups. Maerth absolutely ridicules the idea that this widespread cannibalism was simply due to hunger. What's his argument against that?
He asks, quite pointedly, why would intelligent humans be the only animals too stupid to find other food? Why would they resort to eating each other's brains when there were plants, fruits, and other animals available?
Yeah, it does seem odd if you put it that way.
And why only brains when the rest of the meat was often neglected? He's clearly a man who doesn't pull his punches when challenging established scientific explanations.
He certainly doesn't. He also dismisses the notion that it was a religious rite. What's his reasoning there?
He calls it illogical to suggest a universal, absurd, murder-based religion could have lasted over 1 million years and still persist in some regions today. He points out that modern cannibals, even those living in lush environments, adhere to diverse religions, proving that cannibalism isn't tied to a singular primitive faith.
So it's not one specific religion driving it.
Right. Furthermore, he highlights the absurdity of the gourmandise theory, that brains were eaten because they were a delicious delicacy, stating that raw brain is rubbery and tasteless, not something a vegetarian ape or human would crave.
Okay, maybe not a delicacy then. His take on why scientists avoid this truth is fascinating too. This inherited guilt idea again.
Exactly. Maerth argues that the true reason scientists avoid or misinterpret cannibalism is due to an unconscious feeling of guilt inherited by all humans, transmitted across ages, making us instinctively recoil from and avoid the truth of our own origins.
Like a deep ancestral trauma that we collectively suppress.
Making us unable to look at the evidence objectively, in his view. And he delves into the structure of this cannibalistic society, revealing some surprising details. He claims that women played a crucial role, actively encouraging these cannibalistic expeditions.
Women encouraged it. Why?
to ensure male sexual vitality and the growth of large, healthy, and intelligent families. This practice, he states, still exists where cannibalism is active today, with women even refusing to marry men who haven't consumed human brains, fearing they wouldn't be able to found large families.
Wow, so women were worried about family size and pushed for brain hunting.
That's his claim. He even suggests that the early cannibals didn't initially know about the intelligence boost, only the sexual excitement, and women suffering from low fertility pushed the men to hunt brains out of desperation.
Wow, so women were basically the orchestrators of this whole brain-eating phenomenon. That's quite the twist. He describes the strict ceremonial aspects of this practice too, right?
He does. It was a communal affair, often preceded by prayers to good spirits to ward off evil ones and ritual dances. Only healthy men participated in these hunts.
Okay, so there were rules.
Very specific rules, and here's a really unnerving one. The brain had to be consumed while still living to prevent secret forces, presumably the spirit or consciousness, from escaping.
Still living? Oh my God.
Yeah. And no metal tools were allowed near the brain either. They preferred stone or wood because metal was believed to interfere with these vital forces.
So it wasn't just about eating, it was about capturing an essence, a life force. And this gets into the perceived transfer of knowledge, too.
Absolutely. Maerth explains that eating the brains of wise old men was believed to transfer their secret knowledge, including forgotten wisdom, and make the consumer healthier, more virile, and longer lived.
Like you literally absorbed their wisdom.
They believed these elders possessed deep knowledge, how to build strong houses, contact good spirits, ward off bad ones, heal illnesses, and even see into the future. Consuming their brains was seen as inheriting their soul or essence. A cannibal once told Maerth that only men could eat brains because women, in their view, could never be as intelligent, and it might even make them sick or crazy.
That's the specific belief system right there. Extraordinary. But what's even more astonishing is that Maerth claims this isn't just ancient history.
No, he connects it to the present.
He astonishingly suggests that illicit ape brain consumption still happens in public restaurants in Asia today, adhering to strikingly similar rules. Full moon, no metal, and even giving the ape alcohol before it's prepared.
Yeah, that detail is particularly jarring. It connects the ancient, disturbing past directly to our present in a way that's just profoundly unsettling.
It really makes you question everything you thought you knew about what humanity is capable of.
It does. And this intense, prolonged practice of brain consumption, Maerth argues, came at a steep price. This brings us to part 3, the price of progress, pathological transformations.
The bill always comes due, doesn't it? So what was this great resignation, as it calls it? Why did cannibalism, this apparently vital practice for human evolution, suddenly end? Or mostly end?
Maerth asserts that the continuous consumption of brains led to an uncontrolled growth, a hypertrophy, which caused immense pressure within the skull. This resulted in widespread brain diseases, analogous to epilepsy, and acute madness, especially affecting the men who consumed these brains.
So basically, brain eating drove people insane.
That's the idea. The situation became so dire that around 50,000 to 60,000 years ago, humanity was forced to make a desperate choice. They recognized the direct link between their cannibalistic practices and these devastating mental illnesses, and thus were compelled to abandon brain consumption.
So it wasn't a sudden moral awakening, but rather a self-preservation measure against widespread insanity. That's quite a pragmatic reason to stop such a gruesome practice.
Indeed, it was born of sheer necessity, according to him.
And what drastic measures did they take to combat this internal brain pressure? Because stopping eating brains wouldn't fix the ones who were already affected, right?
Right. To cope with this internal skull pressure, ancient humans around the world resorted to desperate measures. Maerth details practices like cranial presses on newborns. You can find images in his book of various skulls that show this artificial deformation, often creating a more bulbous dome on the head.
Pressing babies' heads.
Yikes. And when that wasn't enough, they performed trepanation, which is the drilling of holes in the skull, to relieve the pressure and, they hoped, maintain sanity and their supersensible faculties.
Drilling holes in their heads.
Thousands of such perforated skulls have been unearthed globally, providing chilling evidence of these desperate attempts.
Cranial presses. Trepanation. So they were literally trying to reshape their own heads to deal with the consequences of their brain-eating past.
Yeah.
That's, well, so one way to deal with a headache.
A rather extreme way, yeah.
And what about the other peculiar aspects of human anatomy that we often take for granted? Maerth has some truly unexpected explanations for those, doesn't he? Like, why aren't we furry?
He does, and it fundamentally challenges our understanding of human evolutionary advantages. Take the loss of body hair, for instance, what's called our pelage. Maerth claims this was not an evolutionary advantage at all, but a disadvantageous pathological loss caused by the hormonal imbalance triggered by brain consumption.
Pathological hair loss, not, adapting to heat.
Not in his view. This forced humans to invent artificial clothing, which he argues is inherently inferior. It hinders movement, circulation, and skin health. He even points to occasional atavistic, hairy humans, individuals born with significant body hair, as proof of our true fur-covered past.
So we wear clothes not because we suddenly got smart and decided to be stylish, but because we got sick and had to. That's a brutal take on the fashion industry.
Pretty much.
And what about our faces? The nose, the lips? Yeah, it's a theory for those too, right?
Absolutely. The elongated nose, he says, evolved as an emergency measure for heating cold air before it reached the lungs, compensating for the lost fur's insulating function.
An emergency, those.
And for tropical races, the thickened, protruding upper lip, full of pores, served as an emergency cooler, allowing rapid sweat evaporation to keep the brain from overheating, a function that the lost fur once provided.
An emergency lip cooler.
Right. He even amusingly debunks the idea that certain nose piercings were originally for aiming arrows, stating they are, in fact, coolers designed to create air currents to aid in this process.
Wait, nose piercings are cooling devices. That's a new one for the jewelry market. My nose ring is keeping my brain cool. And what about the hair on our heads, which seems to grow so profusely when the rest of our body hair disappeared?
That, too, is seen as a pathological misdirection of energy. While our body hair diminished, the growth of long, often useless head hair paradoxically increased. Maerth suggests it's an energy misdirection, though he notes that some ancient sages believed head hair could harness energies for supersensible perceptions.
Okay, so maybe some use for it.
But even baldness, he argues, is a pathological phenomenon linked to the same hormonal imbalance.
It's all connected back to the brain-eating hormones. And hygiene. He has some strong opinions on that as well.
He does. The loss of fur, according to Maerth, exposed our pores, making sweat evaporation inefficient and trapping toxins directly on the skin. This led to perpetual uncleanliness and the inherent need for artificial hygiene washing, perfumes, and even modern scientific deodorants.
Ah, deodorant.
He condemns these deodorants as harmful because they prevent the body from releasing essential toxins through sweat. He says that in healthy apes, sweat once rose along the hairs of their pelage and simply fell off as dust, keeping them clean without bathing. Now we just trap those toxins.
Great. So now I feel bad about showering.
Sure.
So essentially our entire grooming industry is a futile attempt to fix a problem we created for ourselves by eating brains and losing our fur. That's quite a marketing slogan. Deodorant. Masking the ancient sins.
He might approve of that slogan, actually.
Okay, so we lost our fur, got strange noses, and became obsessively clean. What else changed? Our diet, right. We didn't just keep eating brains eventually.
Precisely. The progressively naked human, constantly needing warmth due to the loss of fur, turned to animal meat consumption. But it wasn't just for warmth. Maerth claims that consuming raw, bloody meat was discovered to significantly increase aggression and what he calls bravery.
Oh, no. So the moment we became naked and started creating warmth, we stumbled upon our inner beast. This is not sounding like a happy evolutionary story. What was the consequence of this newfound bravery?
This, he argues, led directly to widespread intertribal warfare, making humanity suffer more than it ever did during the period of cannibalism.
More suffering than during cannibalism. Wow.
The consumption of aggressive animals was believed to transfer their bravery to the consumer, leading to an escalating cycle of conflict. The pursuit of meat, especially raw meat and fresh blood, was, in his words, a drug of courage that only brought suffering.
So brave equals miserable. It almost sounds like a cautionary tale. And this is where philosophers and prophets step in, isn't it, to try and fix this mess?
Yes. Recognizing the destructive cycle of war fueled by this diet, philosophers and prophets such as Moses introduced religious dietary laws. These laws often forbade the consumption of raw meat, or the meat of specific aggressive animals.
Like kosher or halal laws.
Potentially connected, yes. The intention, Maerth claims, was to reduce human combativeness. He states that this intervention allowed for periods of peace and, crucially, for the flourishing of philosophical thought, as the style of food significantly influences thinking. Man is what he eats, he states.
That's a stark connection. Diet to peace and philosophy. And then he brings it right up to modern society, doesn't he? He connects the dots to us now.
He does, quite strikingly. Maerth provocatively links the high modern meat consumption, particularly in countries like the USA, which he claims consumes the most meat per capita, to a surge in mental illness, crime, and ongoing war.
Whoa. Meat eating causes war and crime.
And he bluntly asks where most of the mentally ill doctors and drug factories are located in the world, implying a direct correlation. This perspective might make you rethink your next burger, or perhaps even your entire grocery list.
Definitely food for thought, pun intended.
Yeah.
But what about the ultimate cause of our modern unhappiness? He says it all links back to a profound loss, and we're about to dive into the very core of human suffering next. It's a concept he calls the Great Short Circuit.
Exactly, the deep underlying problem.
Wow. From brain-eating apes to the ethics of your Saturday night steak. That's quite a journey. And now, the truly existential stuff. This takes us to part 4. The lost faculties, a world without supersensible perception. He's talking about the ultimate price of all this progress, right?
Exactly. This, for Maerth, is the central tragedy of humanity. He describes it as the Great Short Circuit. The hypertrophied brain, under immense pressure from its unnatural growth, developed a physical short circuit in a specific crucial area.
The short circuit in the brain, like literally.
Physically, yes. This, he states, paralyzed the part of the brain responsible for supersensible perception.
Supersensible perception, like ESP, telepathy, that kind of thing.
That's part of it, yes. According to Maerth, we lost everything that truly connects us to the deeper meaning of existence. He lists several profound losses.
Okay, what did we lose when our brains short-circuited?
First, the ability to perceive the immaterial world, our true self, and the fundamental meaning of existence. This is why we constantly question, who am I, and what is the purpose of life?
Because that part of our brain is broken.
Second, memory of our prior existence as healthy apes and the true traumatic way we became human. This amnesia, he says, forced us to invent all those flattering yet ultimately false origin stories we discussed earlier. Third, telepathic communication with other humans. We were once naturally able to understand each other's thoughts, mind to mind.
No need for language.
Apparently not. And fourth, perception of future and past events, precognition and retrocognition, seeing beyond the present moment.
So we're not just forgetful, we're fundamentally blind to entire dimensions of reality because of a physical defect in our brains. That's truly a bleak picture.
It is, and he says animals still possess these abilities, right? What examples does he give for that?
He states that all healthy living creatures possess these supersensible faculties, including telepathy, as their normal state.
Our normal state is defective, then.
In his view, yes. He provides numerous fascinating examples. The intricate social order of animal herds, termite and ant colonies, building complex structures via telepathy, vultures knowing where prey will fall even before the kill, worms knowing how severe a future winter will be, unborn animals communicating telepathically with their mothers, and even plants communicating with each other.
Plants communicating? Wow.
He suggests that if you want to know if someone is thinking ill of their group, watch how the group leader punishes them, sometimes even expelling them, based on these telepathic bad thoughts.
That's a wild thought. You can't even think a bad thought without getting caught in the animal kingdom. But for humans, if these abilities occasionally appear, like someone having a prophetic vision or a strong presentiment, a feeling that something is about to happen, what is that? A glimpse of what we lost.
Maerth says these aren't miracles, but rather atavistic regressions, a temporary accidental reappearance of a lost natural faculty that was once normal for humanity.
So it's like a throwback.
Exactly. He even hints that figures like Buddha and Jesus might have been individuals born without this specific brain defect, explaining their divine or extraordinary abilities to see and understand beyond normal human perception. He references a specific modern example of a man in South India who, after a high fever in his youth, developed these extraordinary powers, capable of predicting the future and even, he claims, materializing spirit.
So a miracle is just a glitch in our defective brains, a peek into what we should be capable of. That is an astonishing thought. It reframes everything spiritual as a physical symptom.
Yeah, it really does.
And this brings us to what he calls our material obsession, doesn't it? Because we can't perceive the other stuff anymore.
Yes. With supersensible perception lost, humans became fixated on the material world. We can only perceive what our physical senses detect, leading us to believe that only matter exists.
Which is most of modern science, really.
Right. This material obsession, Maerth argues, led to increasing moral miseries and obsessions. It imposed upon us what he dramatically calls the curse of work and the relentless, seemingly endless pursuit of progress.
The curse of work. I feel that some Mondays, so our endless striving, our 9-to-5 grind, our obsession with more, that's a symptom of a sick brain. That's quite a diagnostic.
Precisely. He sees it as a self-perpetuating cycle. Every material measure taken to fix psychological problems or alleviate suffering only creates more suffering and more work. Progress, in his view, is nothing more than a visible chain of unsuccessful material arrangements.
Ouch. So technological advancement is just making things worse.
Humans, he says, blindly defend this progress, even as it causes immense suffering, unwilling to admit that material solutions can never fix inherently spiritual or psychological problems. To question it, for Maerth, is almost sacrilege in modern society.
And this ties into his idea of collective psychosis and the power of thought. He states that even though conscious telepathy is lost to us, human thoughts still radiate and are received subconsciously by others, subtly influencing their thoughts and actions.
Like a bad vibe you pick up from someone.
Maybe something like that, but on a mass scale. This subconscious perception, he explains, is what accounts for collective psychosis in crowds, whether it at sports events, political rallies, or military parades. Individuals within these groups act as one, often doing destructive things they wouldn't normally do alone, feeling justified because they're acting under a collective trance.
Mob mentality, essentially.
But he adds a layer. He says these bad actions are seen as just because they are done under narcosis, but the individuals are still culpable for abandoning personal thought.
That's a truly unsettling thought, that a crowd can essentially hypnotize you into doing something terrible and you're still responsible. And he connects this to national character too, right?
Yes. He believes that over decades and centuries, sustained thought patterns within a nation become deeply ingrained, almost hereditary instincts, forming what we perceive as national character.
Whoa, hereditary thoughts.
He emphasizes that bad thoughts are not private. They permeate the environment like a disease, affecting everyone, even subconsciously. Maerth goes as far as to state, evil must not even be thought.
Whoa. So no dark fantasies, no petty grievances, because they're literally infecting the air we breathe. That gives a whole new meaning to toxic thoughts.
Yeah. He even claims that objects themselves absorb thought imprints.
Objects, like haunted houses?
Kind of. He advises that criminal objects like murder weapons should be burned, as they absorb these negative thought imprints. And he suggests that sensitive individuals can perceive the vibrations of objects created or used by malevolent or selfish people.
Okay, that's getting into some really esoteric territory.
And he doesn't stop there. Maerth offers what he considers proof that thoughts can affect reality, citing experiments where plants grew better when good thoughts were directed at them versus those that were cursed.
The talking to your plants thing.
Exactly. He also references ancient yogic practices like materializing spirit, moving objects, creating rain, or instantly growing trees from seeds. He says these aren't miracles, but simply instances where intense, focused thought accelerates natural processes.
So basically, what we think can literally shape our physical world. And if that's true, then prayer is a cosmic law, like the law of attraction almost.
He claims that intense desire or prayer can indeed move mountains. It's a cosmic law, and this fundamental understanding, he believes, is key to comprehending our lost faculties, particularly our ability to perceive time differently. Maerth argues that the fastest speed isn't light, but the speed of thought and immaterial energy.
Okay, faster than light thought. That's a profound concept. How does he explain perceiving the future or past with this? Uses an analogy, doesn't he? The wheel.
He uses the analogy of a wheel spinning around a vertical axis. The rim of the wheel represents the material world, governed by time and movement. The spokes represent prana, that vital life force or immaterial energy often discussed in Eastern philosophies, linking matter and spirit directly at all moments.
Okay, rim is time, spokes are energy.
And the motionless axis at the center. That represents spirit. To see the past or future, one must connect with this motionless axis, placing one's own spirit at the center of the wheel, from which all points on the rim, past, present, and future, appear motionless.
Fascinating. So we're stuck on the rim, focused on the illusion of movement because our brains are damaged. We can't get to the center.
Exactly. Humans, being mentally alienated and fixated on the rim, have lost this ability to perceive the timeless axis. And Maerth doesn't pull any punches regarding who he believes contributed to this loss.
Oh, who does he blame?
He argues that Christian churches, among others, actively suppressed prophecy and condemned it as sin or the work of the devil, precisely to prevent people from accessing these supersensible faculties.
To keep people stuck on the rim, maybe.
That seems to be his implication. Yet he points out what he views as profound hypocrisy, as these same religious leaders would then secretly practice similar blessings for collective murder in wars. It's a striking indictment of how religious institutions, in his view, may have further cemented humanity's blindness.
So basically, the people who were supposed to be our spiritual guides actually kept us blind and profited from it. That's a truly cynical yet thought-provoking take on religious history.
It's very critical, yes.
And all of this leads us into our next section, which details the profound impact of this short circuit on how we communicate. This is part 5, the Tower of Babel and the Curse of Language.
Indeed. As telepathic understanding began to disappear sporadically at first, then, with increasing frequency, humanity, according to Maerth, plunged into a state of terror and despair.
Because they couldn't understand each other anymore.
Exactly. Original human sounds were merely automatic expressions of emotion, laughter, crying, screams, groans of pain, howls of terror, not language as we know it. These were, in his estimation, the only truly original vocabulary of the human species.
So before this fall, we didn't actually talk to each other. We just felt and reacted. That sounds like a silent movie.
That's right. With telepathy fading, these automatic sounds were the only vestiges of communication. To compensate, humans began developing physical signals and gestures.
Hand signals, pointing.
This was an interim solution, but Maerth points out its limitations. Gestures required visual contact, and they interfered with physical labor. You couldn't gesticulate and work at the same time.
Right, hard to carry something and use sign language. So the desperate need to communicate led to grunts and hand-waving, not very sophisticated. But then we learned to speak, right? We invented language.
Yes. He describes it as a painstaking process. The tongue, originally an organ of digestion, was forced to learn to articulate sounds. This created arbitrary code words within tribes, forming what he calls an artificial language, a forced, insufficient substitute for lost telepathy.
Forced and insufficient. He's not a fan of language, is he?
Not really. He emphasizes that language is not hereditary. If 100 newborn babies were raised on an isolated island without human contact, they would only emit inarticulate cries, proving that language is a construct, not innate.
That's a really stark thought experiment.
Yeah.
Where he says this artificial language became a source of division, which is truly ironic given its purpose was to bridge communication gaps.
It absolutely is. Language became a precious collective good, a tribal secret. Different languages, in Maerth's view, immediately created foreignness, leading to division and war, even between races of common origin.
Because we literally couldn't understand each other, or something deeper.
He attributes this to the subconscious perception of different wavelengths, a lingering echo of the lost telepathic ability, which made other languages feel inherently other and caused them to be viewed with suspicion.
Different wavelengths. This sounds a lot like his reinterpretation of the Tower of Babel. That's usually about language confusion.
It is the crux of it. Maerth completely reinterprets the Tower of Babel myth. He states it wasn't about God confusing languages as punishment for human arrogance. Instead, he points out the word Babel comes from the ancient Hebrew word balal, which means confusion generally, not specifically confusion of language.
Okay, so just general confusion, not linguistic confusion.
Right. He states the tower was a monument to humanity's premature and boastful triumph of sex, the cannibalism that led to intellectual and sexual excess, which ultimately resulted in their spiritual downfall and mental alienation.
Triumph of sex, meaning the increased drive from brain eating.
That's the implication. The tower itself, he claims, was a massive phallic lingam, a symbol of this misplaced triumph. The collapse of the tower represented humanity's realization that their victory was a catastrophic defeat, leading to the loss of telepathy and the onset of mental illness. The resemblance to God, for whom the tower was supposedly built to reach, no longer existed.
So the Tower of Babel wasn't about God punishing us for trying to reach him, but us collapsing under the weight of our own cannibalistic progress.
Mm-hmm.
And the confusion was a mental one, not a linguistic one. That is a truly provocative take on one of the most famous biblical stories.
Completely flips the script.
And it ties into his critique of modern language and education, doesn't it? He thinks language is still causing problems.
It does. Maerth sees a modern linguistic catastrophe. He argues that complex academic language can have an almost hypnotic effect, allowing dangerous pseudo-intellectuals to gain power and mislead humanity with seemingly scientific arguments that are, in reality, absurd.
Like using big words to confuse people.
Essentially. People become susceptible to manipulation because they are influenced by the mode of expression rather than verifying the accuracy of what is said. He says humans have stopped thinking for themselves, allowing themselves to be hypnotized by words.
So, fancy words and jargon are basically a weapon against critical thinking. That's a sharp critique of academia. And he's not a fan of widespread higher education either, is he?
Not in its modern form. He argues that widespread higher education creates dangerous semi-intellectuals who are responsible for catastrophes.
Dangerous semi-intellectuals. Ouch.
He points out that ancient civilizations with high philosophical knowledge often had very low literacy rates, demonstrating that true wisdom and philosophical understanding do not require widespread reading and writing. In fact, he suggests the opposite, that philosophical knowledge has declined as literacy has increased.
So more reading and writing equals less wisdom. That's counterintuitive.
It definitely goes against the grain.
So the solution isn't more universities or better communication software. More Zoom calls won't save us.
No, absolutely not. Maerth's radical solution is not more linguistic perfection or more sophisticated computers. The path forward, he insists, is for humanity to think for itself, to return the brain to its original true function of philosophical contemplation, rather than being distracted by material progress or misled by pseudo-intellectuals.
That's a powerful call to individual critical thought. Just think more. And it leads us to part 6, the formation of races and the echoes of guilt. He's got a pretty wild origin story for human races, doesn't he? Beyond just the initial brain-eating ape.
He certainly does. Maerth firmly states that humanity did not descend from a single ape race. The missing link that scientists feverishly search for is, in his view, a scientific fabrication and a figment of their imagination.
No missing link. So where did we come from?
Instead, he proposes a truly unique hybrid origin.
Okay, so if not a single ape race, then what? How did humanity truly begin, according to Maerth? A hybrid of what?
The first human, he claims, was a male hybrid born from a forced mating between an African hominid ape and an Asian hominid female.
African and Asian apes mixed together.
Yes. This hybrid, he says, possessed unique genes that allowed it to reproduce with both of its parent races, which is generally impossible for hybrids like mules. He cites ancient Hindu, Egyptian, and Persian traditions that spoke of such miracles of hybrid reproduction.
So the first man was the product of an impossible forced union between continents. That's specific. And how did this new hybrid race become so widespread?
This male hybrid and his descendants became the first cannibals. They hunted the males of the original ape races and forcefully impregnated the females, thereby biologically converting them into the new human race and propagating these specific genes of the hybrid race.
Wait, forcefully impregnating the females of the original ape races?
That's his claim. This violent procreation, combined with multiple ape subspecies, including gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans assimilated into the lineage, explains the vast diversity of human races we see today. Races differed physically from the start, and through forced mixing, new human types were continually formed.
That is a shocking and, frankly, disturbing vision of humanity's genetic origins, born from forced procreation and cannibalism across different ape species.
Wow.
It's definitely one of the more extreme parts of his theory.
And he ties this into the lingering practice of cannibalism, especially among what he calls later races. What does he mean by that?
He does. Maerth states that races that began cannibalism later, such as some groups in New Guinea, Southeast Asia, Africa, and Amazonia, have not yet achieved the high fertility of the older races and still rely on cannibalism to increase their reproductive capacity and intelligence.
So they're still eating brains to try and catch up reproductively and intellectually.
That's his controversial assertion. He claims that colonial powers, by banning cannibalism without understanding its motives for these groups, inadvertently condemn these isolated late races to extinction, unless they interbreed with more fertile neighboring races, which, he argues, slowly increases their intelligence and reduces their need for cannibalism. So he's saying colonialism's ban on cannibalism might have actually harmed these groups by stopping their evolutionary process. That's an incredibly unconventional and, again, morally complex viewpoint.
Highly controversial, yes.
And what about the legendary Yeti and Sasquatch? Where do they fit into this bizarre puzzle?
He even fits them into this theory. Maerth proposes that these legendary creatures are not primitive apes, but rather remnants of non-cannibal early humans.
Bigfoot didn't eat brains.
Apparently not. These happier primitive men, as he calls them, still possess their fur, telepathic communication, and normal sexual lives, and crucially, they do not suffer from the curse of work or the obsession with progress that plagues Homo sapiens. They represent a human path that avoided the fall through cannibalism and brain damage.
The ones who took the other path.
Right. He challenges evolutionists to explain why these hairy, upright creatures, if caught, wouldn't be able to make soap or gunpowder despite their free hands and bipedalism if they were truly on the same evolutionary path as us.
So Bigfoot is just a healthier, more chill version of us who dodged the brain-eating bullet. That's a fascinating and surprisingly optimistic spin on a cryptid. And this explains the mystery he raised earlier about tool-making apes coexisting with non-tool-making apes, doesn't it?
Precisely. Maerth claims the tool-making cannibal apes had consumed brains and gained the necessary intelligence, while the non-tool-mating, non-cannibal apes in the same locations and time periods simply hadn't yet begun the practice.
The Yetis and their kin.
It's a direct explanation for what he sees as a significant contradiction in conventional evolutionary theory, one that scientists, in his view, stubbornly ignore while searching for a non-existent missing link.
It's all interconnected in his theory, isn't it? And this primal cannibalistic origin, according to Maerth, also explains the dragon of discrimination. How does that work?
It does. He posits that in animals, discrimination, whether racial or cultural, is a natural instinct that ensures peace and prevents unwanted mixing, ensuring the strength of each species.
Okay, like animals staying with their own kind.
However, in humans, due to our psychological upheaval stemming from cannibalism and its consequences, this natural instinct is distorted into a 1,000-headed dragon that fuels racial hatred, persecution, and war. It's an instinct that, though repressed by intellect, explodes in the wrong direction.
So our prejudice isn't a sign of ignorance. It's a perverted animal instinct warped by our messed up origins. That's a truly chilling thought.
Exactly. Maerth argues that humans subconsciously still associate different languages or religions with other races on different wavelengths, a lingering effect from the loss of telepathy. This subconscious perception then fuels prejudice and conflict.
Those different wavelengths again.
He even goes so far as to describe how modern groups, whether political parties, sports teams, or even scientific collaborations, act like these ancient cannibalistic hordes, engaging in destructive acts they wouldn't individually, driven by a subconscious sense of triumph over others.
That's a pretty dark interpretation of fan culture and scientific rivalry. Your football team is basically acting out ancient cannibalistic urges.
It's a bleak view of group dynamics, and he sees this as the fundamental tragedy of man.
He calls it the tragicomedy of man, the constant struggle between human intellect, which desires peace and equality, and these powerful, perverted, cannibalistic instincts that still win, despite our conscious intentions. This leads to profound paradoxes, such as the widespread imprisonment of individuals solely for holding different opinions, which he finds abhorrent and an offense to life itself.
The tragedy of wanting peace, but being driven by these distorted instincts.
Yeah. And now, for the grand finale. Maerth ties all of this back to one of the most foundational texts in Western civilization, Genesis. He asserts that Genesis is not just a myth, but a true history and a prophecy. This is part 7. Genesis reimagined a true history, a prophecy. How does he make that leap? How is Genesis history?
Maerth asserts that Genesis is a clear factual description of human formation, including the unnatural evolution from a hairy ape to a human via cannibalism. He claims that the first part of Genesis, which describes the creation of earth and life, from darkness and vapors to the emergence of different life forms in 6 days, accurately aligns with modern geological and scientific findings. He interprets 6 days as 6 epochs.
Okay, so the sequence of creation matches science, more or less.
Given the accurate sequence of creation, he argues this validates Genesis's factual basis.
So if the first part is scientifically accurate, then why wouldn't the second part, which describes man's origin, be equally true? The problem, he says, is our inability to comprehend it. We just can't handle the truth.
Precisely. He suggests that the difficulty lies in humanity's unwillingness or inability to comprehend and accept the extraordinary things Genesis says about itself. We find it too confronting. And this leads to his audacious decoding of the fall.
Okay, this is where it gets really juicy. How does he reinterpret Adam and Eve? Not real people, obviously.
Adam and Eve, he explains, are not literal individuals, but rather symbols of the human species. Their formation from Earth is a symbol of the African-Asian ape hybrid origin we discussed earlier.
The hybrid origin again. And Eve from Adam's rib? What's that?
Eve from Adam's rib, he says, refers to a physical anomaly of 13 rib pairs found in some humans, a degenerated trace of an ancestor who possessed 13 ribs, a consequence of this hybrid creation.
13 ribs. Is that a real thing?
It occurs occasionally. He explicitly states that if scientists found such a rib anomaly in a modern ape, they'd immediately declare it a new species, yet they ignore it in humans.
So even our skeletal structure holds the secrets of our unnatural birth, and leaving father and mother to become one flesh, usually interpreted as marriage.
That, according to Maerth, describes the first male hybrid leaving its original parent ape races and forcefully mixing with their females to create a new blended human race. One flesh signifies the creation of this new hybrid race.
The forced procreation again. Not exactly romantic.
He stresses that this wasn't a consensual mixing, as original apes wouldn't willingly mate with such a foreign, cannibalistic hybrid. It was a violent appropriation of females.
Okay. And God's original plan for humanity, before we messed it up.
God, he says, originally intended a peaceful, millions of years long natural evolution for this hybrid race to reach divine intelligence, a plan reflected in the phrase, God created man in his image. But man thwarted the divine plan by seeking intelligence through unnatural, accelerated means, through the act of consuming brains.
We took a shortcut and ruined everything. And the forbidden fruit. The core of the false story, not an apple.
This is Maerth's most radical reinterpretation. The fruit of the tree of knowledge is not a literal fruit, it is the human brain.
The brain is the forbidden fruit.
Consuming it, he argues, made humans intelligent and caused the loss of body hair, leading to their nakedness and subsequent shame. The promised death wasn't immediate physical death, but a spiritual one, leading to self-destruction and the devastation of Earth.
Spiritual death.
He dismisses theological interpretations that equate the original sin with sex, pointing out that God commanded humans to be fruitful and multiply, so that couldn't be the sin. The sin, for Math, was the means by which they became intelligent cannibalism.
So the brain was literally the forbidden fruit that made us smart, but also naked and ashamed. That's an audacious interpretation. And the consequences of this sin, as he calls it, shame is one.
They are profound. Shame and modesty, especially sexual modesty, are presented as pathological consequences of collective murder cannibalism and unconscious guilt, not signs of moral maturity. Animals, he notes, have no shame.
Right, dogs don't care. What else?
The pain of human childbirth and male dominance over women are also consequences of cannibalism and the resulting sexual chaos. Marriage and prostitution, in this view, are merely artificial solutions to an intrinsically disordered sexual life born from this unnatural evolution.
So painful childbirth is because of cannibalism. And marriage is just a patch for sexual chaos.
Wow. It's a complete reframing of social structures.
And the curse of work, earning bread by the sweat of your brow, also from brain eating.
That, too, is a direct consequence of the mental illness caused by brain consumption, forcing humans into endless, pointless labor disguised as progress. He sees our modern striving for material gain as a compulsive effort by a diseased mind to find happiness in the wrong place, a perpetual cycle of futility.
Pointless labor. Yeah, some jobs feel like that. Yeah. He also re-examines the Tower of Babel in this Genesis context, doesn't he? Not just about language.
Yes. For Maerth, the Tower of Babel was not about a confusion of languages at all, as we discussed. It was a monument to humanity's premature triumph, gigantic lingams, phallic symbols of the sexual and intellectual power they believed they had gained through cannibalism.
Giant phallic towers celebrating cannibalism-fueled power.
The tower remained unfinished, not because people couldn't understand each other linguistically, but because humanity realized its victory was a catastrophic defeat. The loss of telepathy, supersensible perception, and the onset of mental illness. The resemblance to God, for whom the tower was supposedly built to reach, no longer existed.
So the tower was a symbol of misplaced pride, and its collapse represented the spiritual and mental breakdown of early humanity. And he ends Genesis with a bleak prophecy, doesn't he? Not a happy ending.
A very bleak one, tied directly to our current trajectory. The Genesis prophecy of Earth becoming thorns and thistles is not God's future punishment, but, in Maerth's interpretation, the inevitable consequence of humanity's progress, our self-destruction. The death of death is not physical death, but the death of humanity's true spiritual potential.
So we're fulfilling the prophecy ourselves through pollution and war and everything else. And that iconic phrase, God created man in his image. How does he twist that knife? It sounds positive, usually.
Maerth interprets God created man in his image as referring to God's original plan for a highly intelligent, divine being, a being who would evolve naturally over billions of years.
The plan we ruined.
This plan, however, man circumvented through cannibalism, seeking an accelerated path to intelligence and becoming a genius madman instead. He argues that humans remain stubbornly convinced of their divine resemblance, refusing to admit they thwarted God's plans and destroyed their own potential.
We're mad geniuses who think we're gods.
Instead, they continue to deceive God through artificial improvements of nature and their own bodies, blindly pursuing a destructive path.
That's a truly chilling conclusion for Genesis.
Huh?
It's not a story of redemption, but a prophecy of self-destruction already in motion. Which leads us to our final part, the immediate future. A path forward, or not. What does Maerth say is coming for us? Does he see any way out?
Maerth believes humanity's suffering, overpopulation, and mental alienation all stem from its fundamental ignorance of its true origin and the pathological nature of its sexuality and intelligence, the very things it sought happiness from.
The things we thought made us special are actually the problem.
He foresees that, driven by mounting anxiety and panic, humanity will be forced to change its relationship with itself, others, nature, and God.
So a forced reckoning is coming. Things have to get really bad first. And he links this to the generational divide we see today.
Yes. He argues that the growing gap between generations is due to the varying degrees of mental alienation and inability to see the truth. He sees it as an insurmountable divide, deeper than any before, because previous generations were less alienated.
Okay. And his critique of modern civilization is particularly scathing, isn't it? Especially the West.
He is unsparing. Maerth strongly condemns modern Western civilization as the most unnatural, most hostile to man, and most primitive of all time.
Wow. Most primitive.
He specifically targets the United States, pointing out that its 6% of the world population consumes approximately 50% of all vital material resources, acquired through what he calls doubtful means. He labels its economic system, where happiness is linked to continuous production, consumption, and waste, as shameless economic masturbation, a sick power that ultimately drives unhappiness and global misery.
Shameless economic masturbation. That's quite a phrase. He really didn't like consumerism.
So material progress is just digging our own grave. Is there any glimmer of hope in Maerth's vision, or is it all despair?
There is a path, but it requires a radical transformation. The only way to alleviate suffering, he says, is a fundamental shift, satisfying only true material needs, working only for those needs, and embracing a simple, healthy, natural life.
Back to basics, minimalism.
He emphasizes this applies especially to Westerners, whom he calls the greatest squanderers of all time.
So we need to basically stop buying so much stuff and get back to nature. That sounds like a good plan for my next Amazon order. Or maybe not. He also predicts a spiritual renewal, an inevitable return to Eastern philosophy and its healthy, natural principles.
A turn to the east.
He foresees that the new leaders of humanity will not be highly educated specialists, but rather ascetic philosophical youth who will emerge from today's disoriented generation, showing the only viable path through their simple lives and philosophical reasoning.
So ditch the degrees, embrace asceticism, and follow the wise youth. That's a very countercultural message. Hippies were right all along, maybe. And he even suggests a very specific ancient intervention on the brain. This is wild.
Yes, and this is truly peculiar. Maerth claims the only valid intervention on the human brain to remedy its physical defect is the ancient practice of skull shaping, creating a dome on the cranium.
Skull shaping, like the cranial presses from earlier. He thinks we should do that.
This, he believes, could potentially restore some supersensible perception and philosophical understanding, allowing for the cultivation of God-men rather than what he disparagingly calls specialized cretins.
Unbelievable. He's advocating for literal head shaping to fix our brains. And his final plea is also quite urgent, isn't it? A warning.
Extremely. He issues a stark warning. Humanity must prevent genetic modifications that manipulate the brain or sex life, especially those designed to create stupid soldiers or sewage men for a scientifically planned future of collective murder and waste disposal.
Okay, that's dystopian.
He believes our existing intelligence is already incurably diseased, and increasing it would only worsen our alienation. The true catastrophe, he concludes, isn't that humanity became intelligent through cannibalism, but that it became mentally ill alongside it.
What a final thought. Intelligence is the disease. Wow. Okay, so let's try and wrap our heads around this. What have we unpacked today?
Well, Maerth proposes that our species isn't the apex of natural evolution, but rather the result of a profound self-inflicted wound: cannibalism. This act, driven initially by sexual desire and later by a lust for intelligence, fundamentally altered our physical form, distorted our sexuality, stripped us of our natural supersensible perception, and replaced our inherent silent understanding with a divisive artificial language.
It's a story where our very progress is the symptom of a deep-seated madness, pushing us towards self-destruction unless we radically shift our understanding of ourselves.
His work is a challenge to our most cherished beliefs about ourselves and our place in the cosmos, a reinterpretation of history that casts humanity as a tragically flawed, self-doomed species, at least in his view.
Think about that. If our progress is really just the feverish work of a diseased mind, what does that say about everything we value in modern society? What personal progress are you pursuing that might actually be driving you further from your true healthy self? And if we've forgotten our origins because it's too uncomfortable, what other inconvenient truths are we blindly ignoring today? It's a lot to chew on, isn't it?
A profound amount. Definitely leaves you thinking.
This deep dive, as mind-bending as it is just one perspective in the vast ocean of knowledge. What stands out to you? What questions does this raise? Let us know in the comments. Your thoughts help us continue these incredible explorations.
We love hearing from you.
And if you enjoyed this journey into the strange, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join our community for more unexpected insights that challenge everything.